Farah, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
I saw your tweet and I wasn't here for the beginning of the live, so I just wanted to ask how you think Marxism is Islam.
How is it not?
I mean, because there are parts of Marxism which, to be able to hold, you would have to compromise some of
Like what?
your Islamic metaphysics.
Like what?
Like, you can't be a materialist.
Yes, you can. Islam is materialist. It's 100% materialist.
Since when? You believe in jinn, you believe in angels, you believe in metaphysical forces that are
Okay.
not
And Muslims and
materialist.
Islam regards jinn and angels and all these other things not to be ideals that are floating somewhere, but actually real things that allow the believer to relate to the fundamental order of the cosmos. They are referring to different aspects of the order of the material cosmos. Material just means essential, okay? The materiality of something is the deeper reality behind something. The formatic level, the ideal level, is a transgression of Greco-Roman pederastic philosophy, which Islam doesn't recognize. Now, there's some Islamic philosophers that dabbled in the Greek stuff, but that was never part of the religion. The people in the desert didn't care about that. So the
What
faith
do
is
you mean?
materialistic. When you're
I
talking
mean,
about
like,
jinns and you're talking about angels and all these things that are beyond empiricism, that's just an acknowledgement of material principles that are not empirically tangible. But Marxism also recognizes material principles that are not empirically tangible. For example, communism is not an empirically tangible thing. Classes are not empirically tangible. A mode of production, a modality of production is not empirically tangible. There's not a single measurable thing you can put in front of you and say, this is a mode of production, this is a class, and so on and so on. You can only define things on the basis of their relationships, their modalities, the patterns of how they reproduce themselves, and so on and so on. So Islam already acknowledges in its Marxist materialism is not empiricism. The Marxist materialism acknowledges and recognizes structuring and governing principles behind the material world. And Islam gives expression to similar principles, but with different language and in a different way. But that
so
doesn't
how can
that doesn't mean
you,
it's at odds with materialism at all.
hold on, how can you fully hold that God is responsible for everything that happens in the
Mm-hmm.
universe, and then also fully hold that the material conditions are responsible for anything that happens?
No,
Sorry,
Marxism
hold on. I'm
regards
not very sure which school
in
of thought you
Marxism
are.
in Marxism
So,
there is one material being. So there is one material being, and within this one material totality of being, this one material universe, there are material laws that govern the universe, right? That govern the development of the cosmos. So the category of the totality and the concrete within Marxism, if you take it at a universal or ontological level, implies God, actually. They didn't have a word for God because God was assumed to be an unreal abstraction of thought, because Marx, coming from the Feuerbachian school and the young Hegelian school, is working backward from philosophy. Philosophy is beginning with the Platonic concept or the ideal, which is it's a receptacle of an unreal form. That's what form basically means for Plato. Something unreal that doesn't actually exist anywhere. It's not real, but it's like belongs to a transcendent realm, right? That can only be accessed by way of the intellect and by way of pure thought. And for Hegel,
so it is a
everything
material.
was downstream from that. So when Feuerbach understood that Hegelianism was just an alienated version of Christianity, when Marx was drawing from that, in his appraisal of religion, he was initially working with the scheme that religion
If
was
you're saying
just,
all this doesn't seem very materialist.
but materialism has nothing to do with empiricism. Materialism is a rejection of the formatic understanding of being, that being is a form, okay, that can only be accessed by means of one specific type of activity, thought, right? So the idea that thinking and being are the same, which I believe is from the Parmenides, from Plato, that is basically the fundamental purport of idealism, in a sense. The notion that the absolute and the ultimate being is some kind of thought. And the notion that the various distinctions and intelligibles and determinations with being are themselves concepts or reflections of concepts or correspond to concepts. And the Marxist view, the materialist view, rejects that. Materialism regards reality as actually the thing that's fundamental and primary, and ideation and thinking as secondary or reflective, right? But with respect to the question of an absolute being, it's not a question of whether the being is unreal or real, but whether it's absolute being. So, does Marxism presuppose the necessity of an absolute being? Absolutely. If there's a material integrity of the cosmos, if there's a material integrity of something that we call a universe, that means there has to be a fundamental principle of existence and reality. Okay, well, historically, that principle was just called God. That's what God
But
referred to.
why
God did not
necessarily the
refer to a
Islamic God?
man in the sky who was wearing a robe, fiddling around doing X, Y, and Z. God is referring to the ultimate reality. If whether that reality is material or ideal is not the question, but actually religion
No, this
is
is the
materialist,
question.
because religion is actually the thing that asserts that reality is material. When philosophers try to say that that
You
reality is an
you
ideal
can say
reality, they're trying to make it accessible by means of the philosophical intellect, which culminates in a type of atheism that says man can become God or be equal to God. And Hegel actually kind of reproduced this, because Hegel talks about this idea of absolute knowledge. Well, absolute knowledge means that man, through his thinking, acquires parity and equality with the thinking and mind of God, in a way, right? But materialism is the thing that says, no, you can never actually achieve parity by way of the intellect or thinking with the absolute integrity of material being. It's always going to be something more fundamental than anything that can be reflected by thought. So, by nature, Marxist materialism rejects shirk, it rejects idolatry, it rejects the idea that the material integrity of being can ever find fruition and satisfaction in any given determination, right? It says the whole thing in its integrity, in its totality, right, can never find full fulfillment in a single determination, in a single thing. And therefore, any idol of existence can't be reduced to it. It's always something more. So this is dialectical materialism.
so I just need to ask here. First of all, like supposing that what you said is true, why specifically does it have to be the Islamic God? Second of all,
What?
why specifically does it have to be the Islamic God?
Because
Why
only
can't
the
it be
Islamic
any
God,
like
only the
monotheistic God?
because because only the Islamic God, because communism is the same thing as monotheism. Communism is about the more fundamental reality that conditions the division of labor. Polytheism states that each of the various divisions of labor exist unto themselves, right? Polytheism, for example, the worship of various different gods and deities, that's a reflection of the division of labor. So that's why in, for example, polytheistic religions like Hinduism, you have a caste society, because they reify and they turn the castes into these absolute unchangeable categories, because it doesn't have a notion of a single reality we all share in common and before which we are all equal, right? So monotheism and communism are the same thing. But Marx's materialism is specifically monotheist because it recognizes one ultimate reality, one ultimate material reality. And the isthmus, which is what the Islamic mystical Sufi philosophers called it, or insan al-kamil, right, is man. For
Yeah.
Marx, that is man. Man
And
is the
then some
fundamental
what?
point of reference
Hold on.
before
Go back
which
to that.
all
What are you
thinking
saying?
must refer to an ultimate and fundamental, absolute, single reality, right? Marx's materialism is bounded up in his humanism of one universal man, one universal human reality, right? But
I mean, I
within the
don't feel like
scheme,
this is very necessary to Marxism, but
what?
I mean, okay. I said I don't feel like this is very necessary to Marxism now.
Why not? No, but think
Like
about
you
it.
could
Think
think
about it.
this.
No, but think about it. Of course it's necessary. Where have the Marxists been the past 50 years? Where's the
I don't know. You
revolution
tell me.
happening right now?
You tell me. Oh.
Think about
What
it.
do you mean by that?
Who are the real revolutionaries today, right now?
What do you mean? Like you
Where are
mean
they?
Hezbollah and like
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, those guys?
Yes, they are. I mean, am I wrong? Who else is it? Tell me. Who else? Where are they? The last
I
time there
mean,
was a
I
Marxist
just like don't
revolutionary
really
was
understand.
Che Guevara was like the last Marxist revolutionary.
No,
Where?
because Hezbollah and stuff, these guys are defending their territory.
Okay.
But if we look at what they're actually doing when their territory isn't being threatened, they're killing Sunni kids in Syria. So they're not really the Marxist revolutionaries.
But that's just propaganda.
But this isn't though. Like
It's just propaganda. I hate to tell you, but it's propaganda. And also the what they were doing in Syria was precisely defending their territory. It's a long-term strategic understanding of the defense of the region, defense of the supply chains that make the resistance possible in the first place. When Syria fell, the ability to defend not just the land of Lebanon, but everyone being able to defend their land from Israeli aggression became severely limited. So what they were doing in Syria was they were trying to preserve the integrity of that state and its territory so that it could continue having a seminal, fundamental strategic role in the facilitation of resistance. But in any case, there are plenty of things that are wanting of being defending, right? What about our human dignity? What about our human rights in some sense? What about our ability to have some kind of existence in the first place? We can't
I'm just
we can't
what I need
resist
to know.
we can't resist the global forces of the bourgeoisie. Marxists have failed. They failed to defend humanity from the global bourgeoisie for the past 50 or so years. They failed. So where are the real revolutionaries in the world today?
What I just need to know, like, why does it have to be the Islamic God and not some deistic God? And like, why do we have to say that the people who are the revolutionaries today, you take it that they're revolutionaries? Why do they have to be the
Because when we
ones
evaluate, because we can invent the deistic God
who
right
are
now.
right?
We can invent
Yeah,
and say,
so we
okay, it's
can.
some kind of deism. But then we would have to evaluate the question, okay, is there any kind of history whatsoever from this point all the way to the eternity of history? Is there any kind of tradition that might have beaten us to the chase? What is the actual content of Islam historically? What did it actually mean
I
to the
mean, there just
masses and
hasn't
masses of
been enough
people?
time.
I mean, you can say deism, but there are logical consequences of deism when it comes to our understanding of being, or our ontology, our understanding of justice, of right and wrong, okay? Our understanding of how we respond to world history. So if you were a deist in the deserts of Arabia in this, the 8th or 7th century, your arc of history would not look that different from what Islam actually became. And throughout all of history, this is a tradition that has absorbed these
Right,
various
but
different
Islam is like a
cycles.
specific thing.
What?
Islam is a specific thing. I mean, for
But
me, Islam is
it may be
following the.
specific, but it's not arbitrary. It's not arbitrary.
Okay.
There's
Okay,
a
but it is
there's a
still specific.
rationale behind the content of Islam that is
It
historically.
has its own theology. Like, you
But
can't
what is
say that
but what is the theology based in? Like, what's the content of the theology? The content of
uh,
theology is
the
ultimately
Quran and
rooted,
Sunnah.
but
But I mean,
all
for
of that
you,
is
it's not the
downstream
Sunnah.
from a universalistic ontology and all the consequences of what it means to draw out a universalistic ontology.
I mean, I just know, like, Islam is very specific. It's much more specific than that. It goes into much
Islam
more
does not
detail
say we
about.
have to worship camels. It doesn't say we have to worship sandals. It doesn't say we have to worship sand. It doesn't say, oh, this specific thing, just arbitrarily we have to. No, there's a rhyme and reason behind everything. There's an exoteric and then there's an esoteric meaning behind everything.
All right. And that is true for Islam, and it's a really specific thing. Like, you can't You can't take the supposed deistic God who will make your uh almost entire beliefs like fiqh
By the way, it's
beliefs.
impossible it could be a deistic god of philosophy because that's a philosophical proposition. That's not an actual material relationship. If there's something called a material absolute, right? Absolute material integrity of being, then the history of the relationship to that being necessarily has to come before us in some kind of way. To say we just now have clarity with respect to what it is implies that we've discovered it by means of philosophy and by means of thought, which is an absurdity. That means it's a philosophical proposition, not actually an authentic revelation uh, uh, or
Well, yeah,
authentic
I mean,
relationship to material being by
if
means of
you no, you're
revelation.
the one here who's logically deducing a god. So I'm saying,
No,
if we're
no,
gonna
I'm
be,
logically just pointing out the obvious fact that Marxism is Islam. That's all I'm doing. I'm just pointing out the obvious by means of logic. Actually, my meme goes viral all the time because everyone in their hearts intuitively knows it's true, but they lack the logical
but this
ability
just
to
isn't
justify why it's
true.
true.
And I mean, how
Most
can
people,
Islam?
if Marxism was not Islam, nobody would get affected by the meme that Marxism is Islam. The fact that it commands so much attention and interest from people shows to me that people know it's true deep down, but they lack the ability by means of consciousness and logic to justify why that is.
You don't think it's a little absurd to say that Islam's
Why?
guy is a kafir?
There's many absurd things you can say. None of them go viral, though, do they?
I mean, okay, but that doesn't really mean anything. And also, why would Marxism be Islam when Islam is like objectively like so reactionary?
How is Islam reactionary?
Well, the patriarchal views and
Okay.
views on
So
homosexuality.
polytheism is progressive then?
No,
What is
but
progressive? Show me what's progressive then.
I'm saying you could just not hold the belief about God in the first place,
Where's the progressive atheism in the world?
or you could just not
So
subscribe to an organized
where's the
religion.
progress that the atheists have given us in the past 50 years? Where is it?
What do you mean by that?
Where are the progressive revolutionary atheists? Where are they?
Well, I'm not really talking to you about
Whoever's
history. I'm
saying
talking to
China,
you
no, they're
about.
not revolutionary. So no, you can't say China. China's not revolutionary. They ended the revolution after Mao. Now they've embarked on their own path, which I respect, but it's not revolutionary. So where are these progressive? Because to be progressive is to be revolutionary, right?
You can say that there's no other progressive alternative, but that doesn't make Islam progressive.
So no, but saying something is reactionary implies there's something progressive, right? Where's the progressive thing?
Well, there doesn't necessarily need to be a progressive religious belief.
Somebody saying
It
convenient
doesn't
time
have
for
to
you
be
to
religious.
stop supporting China. That has nothing to do with China had its revolution. China's not sitting here saying it's offering the world a revolutionary path. China is saying we've had our own revolutionary path. Now we're in our Confucian society. We see no need to start a world revolution or something, and we're just going our own way. That's fine. That's well within their right. But I don't live in China. I live in America. So if we don't live in China, we can't import China's model, and the Chinese themselves don't tell us to import their model, by the way. Anyway, continue.
No, I'm like asking you a question. Like, do you not think that Islam is reactionary?
Of course it's not reactionary.
How?
Because to say Islam is reactionary implies that the polytheism it emerged against was progressive, which is ridiculous.
No, not necessarily the
So
polytheism
what
it
is it
emerged
reactionary with
against.
respect to? With respect to what? So let's talk about Afghanistan in the
With
70s
respect
and
to
80s.
all
You
ideas
can
that have been
say
proposed in the history of humanity, okay?
what ideas? All of the progressive
Good.
ideas that came from the Middle East came from Islam.
Well, this isn't necessarily true. I
Yes, it
mean, you can
is.
see
All
the.
the advances in
Mm,
the sciences, for example, in mathematics, that was all within Islam.
Well, Avicenna in his time was called a kafir.
Okay, so was Jesus and his followers. They were called
No.
atheists. Yes, they were. The first Christians were called atheists by the Romans. Actually, Muslims were called atheists too. They were they it was
So
said
they
that
were
they
called
worshiped
disbelievers.
nothingness because they didn't worship idols, so it was said they worshiped nothingness by their enemies.
But Avicenna lived in a Muslim society. That's the difference.
Okay, so what? Why is it a given
I'm
that
saying that most of these
okay.
Islamic thinkers, they were
So
called
was he channeling polytheism? What was he channeling that was somehow outside of Islam? Islamic societies that you're talking about persecuted Shia, they
I'm not
persecuted
saying he's a
Sufis,
kafir.
they
I'm not saying he's a
they,
kafir.
they persecuted all manner of revolutionaries who were still working within the framework of Islam. But where were the revolutionaries who were outside of Islam? That's my question.
What is this a question? I mean, all of the revolutionaries were called kafir.
They were called that, but did they themselves see themselves as outside of Islam?
Well, you could very well say that
What is
they
it?
were
Okay,
only
even
saying they were
according to the
Muslims to
legalism,
protect themselves.
even according to even according to legalism, I'll explain why that's a no. But even according to the legalism, how is a Muslim defined?
You tell me.
You just say you're a
Because
Muslim.
I
You
think
take
we'll
this. You
have
take the
different
shahada.
definitions.
You take the shahada, and you confess you're a
No, I'm
Muslim.
Muslim.
What?
I'm Muslim. I've been Muslim.
Yeah, but anyone who says that is considered a Muslim in the Muslim framework.
No, not necessarily. I mean, the Prophet,
That's the
peace be
rule.
upon him, says, you can
Yeah.
do things that take you out of the fold
To
of
be
Islam.
a Muslim is to declare your faith as a Muslim. That's how you become a Muslim. So
No, but we know from the hadith that there are things you can do that take you out of the fold of Islam. We know from the Quran as well.
the renunciation of belief.
So I can be a Muslim who doesn't pray my 5 times a day.
Yes, you can be a Muslim who doesn't
give my
follow
zakat.
any
No,
Muslim
you
rules.
can't.
Yes,
No,
you can.
because
You
we
can be
know
a
from the
Muslim who
hadith
does
that you
not follow
can.
any. You can absolutely be a Muslim who doesn't follow any of the rules.
Well, if you can do anything and be a Muslim, then yeah, sure, you can say that Marxism is Islam, but it wouldn't be Islam that's true to the Quran and the Hadith.
Hold on. You're talking about two different things. You're talking about Islam as a legalistic tradition, which not all Muslim sects have even agreed upon, and yet you can't say that they're outside of Islam, versus Islam as it actually materially was historically. For example, various Sufi traditions that emerged from the time of revelation up to this point had very different views about the so-called 5 pillars of Islam. They have very different interpretations about the nature of the legalisms. And they still regarded themselves as within the Islamic tradition. And there's no other tradition we can locate them within.
As within it doesn't make you within it.
According to who? Who's making the rules? Saudi Arabia? Tell me who makes the rules. No, the sick truth is that the people who made the rules were the people who had power. They were the people who had the monopoly on violence. That's it. They made the rules. Who defines what it really is and what it isn't?
So you're saying the rules of your religion were made up by the people who had power. I mean, does this sound okay to you to say?
Yes, it does. Because you know why? Because Islam, when we use this word Islam, we're talking about a fundamental type of belief, which is supposed to be a pure relationship between the individual and God, the absolute, right? So
No, it's
yeah,
much more than
absolutely. Islam is a relationship between the individual and God.
that. No, it's much more than that.
Nope.
I mean, how can you say that when there's Sharia law?
Because human beings can interpret it however they want to interpret it.
So you don't believe in Sharia?
I don't believe in what?
Sharia?
Communism is Sharia.
So
The Soviet Constitution of
you do.
1936 was Sharia.
So you do believe in Sharia?
The true Sharia, yes.
Okay, so how can you say that God's command can be imposed on another, and then say that it's the relation between the individual and God?
Because
Obviously, if it's being
making
imposed, then it's
reference
not
because
individual.
the authority of Islam does not come from hiding behind the skirt of conventions and habits. The authority of Islam comes from the struggle, the jihad, right, for a concrete relationship between justice, injustice, oppressor, oppressed, right and wrong, truth and falsehood. In Islam, everything that is true belongs to Allah, right? Now, there's two ways of looking at religion. You see, the true way to look at religion is not, here are the set of rules and bullet points from Microsoft PowerPoint. It's not an Excel sheet, okay? The way to look at a religion is, what fundamental relationship do I have to the very logos, the very fundamental rationale behind all of these different interpretive traditions that came about in the first place? What active living faith doesn't say, oh, this is the rule, that's it. Active living faith says, here's the fundamental relationship I have to the absolute, for which X, Y, and Z law and rule is actually rational and necessary.
Okay. Like, how does this relate? I mean, I asked you how, like, you can believe in imposing Sharia on other people, and then also believe that
What is Sharia?
religion is
What does Sharia mean? Go ahead, translate it.
the divine command of Allah for
No,
how we
translate
govern.
it. Translate the etymology. What is Sharia?
Means law.
Translate it. Find the etymology. Just
What do you
Google it.
mean?
Google the etymology of Sharia.
I speak Arabic.
So give me the etymology of Sharia.
What do you mean? It means
Look up
Sharia.
etymology of Sharia.
Yeah, hold on. Can we go back to something that you
No,
said
the
that Sharia was
etymology of
communal?
Sharia. Give me the etymology of Sharia.
What answer do you want me to give?
Just look up etymology of Sharia.
And read it out to you?
Yes.
Okay. Give me a second. It says, Sharia is the body of divine religious law in Islam that serves as...
The etymology. The etymology.
I said etymology. It's not
E-T-Y.
I know how to spell etymology.
So read out the etymology of Sharia.
Comes from Arabic, translating literally to the path leading to the water.
There we go. The pathway to water. Why is the law of God? Why does the etymology referring to the law of God mean the pathway to water? Why is that? Do you know?
You tell me.
Because in the Islamic ontology, okay, you have the relationship between the fire, okay, the earth. Fire is the extreme of the air, right? Because you have the deadly scorching fire in the desert that comes from hot air, right? When it burns. In the framework of Islam, water is a dialectical mediation of these two ontological principles, right? Which is the way of fire being in reference to the, kind of intangible, the spiritual realm, right? And earth being the grounded material world. Water is the dialectical sublation of both. And so the way to water is the same thing as dialectical materialism. A law based on the principle of dialectical materialism. Absolutely the truth. Dialectical materialism is at the foundation of Sharia. Sharia means dialectical materialism. That's all it means.
That's not what this means.
Absolutely. You can't handle the truth. You can't handle it.
You can say whatever you want.
No, this is the truth. This is the truth.
You understand what I mean when I say Sharia. I mean
No. Why should I care, though? I understand what you're trying to say. I'm asking why I should care.
Because you believe in this. You believe in an Islamic way of governing.
What does it mean to believe? Know them by their fruits. What is the content of belief? That there's some sheikh somewhere in Saudi Arabia, I have to listen to what he says because he has a lot of fucking money? Because the Saudis have money and they can build madrasas across the world and standardize Islam as they see fit. Why should I have to listen to anyone because they have money or they have power? What is
I'm not
truth?
saying
Truth comes
listen
from the
to
heart.
anyone. I'm saying read the
Belief
Quran.
comes from the heart. Doesn't come from anywhere else but the heart.
No, it comes from the head, actually. But
Okay. If you were among the companions, the first people among the prophet, what could incentivize you to follow the prophet? That's the Islam that I care about.
That he had miracles and he had his proof.
What were the miracles of the prophet?
You don't think that the Quran is a linguistic miracle? You don't think that splitting the
Nope,
moon
it
is
does.
a miracle?
No. The prophet, because he brought justice on earth, because his virtues were evident and shown.
And he had his miracles.
The miracles of the prophet were not the primary motivation for why people became followers of the prophet.
Yes, it is.
He wasn't a magician. No, he wasn't a magician. He wasn't a sorcerer.
That's why they were accusing him of it, because you would listen to the Quran and you'd realize how much of a miracle it is, and you convert.
Yes, the written, yes, the meaning bounded up in the revelation was the miracle. The fact he could articulate the fundamental meaningfulness of the world to people was the miracle. It wasn't based in theatrics and magic.
Okay, I still don't like. Why did we get here? Why didn't you answer my question? Why? Like, okay, I'll take away the word Sharia if it bothers you. How can we say that there is an Islamic way of government when you're saying that it's an individual relation between God and the individual?
Because the purpose of Islam is not for an authority to come here and say, this is the religion, and someone can claim the authority of Islam, but the authority has to be proven by the living works, by the living virtue, by the living proof that what you're doing aligns with what people know in their heart to be true versus false, just versus wicked.
What are you saying?
And the only way people can verify that is what's within their hearts and the personal relationship they have to God. Nothing else.
This is not materialist. I'm so sorry to say.
The only way people could verify the truth of the prophet's words was that it aligned with what they knew in their hearts but had repressed for so long.
This is
the
not
prophet's words opened up. No, the words of the prophet.
What do you mean?
The words of the prophet. The words of the prophet opened up the relationship the individual has to God. A relationship that had been obscured, had been fogged with ignorance and confusion. His words miraculously, for people, opened up this relationship and clarified it. That's why the pre-Islamic world is called Jahiliyyah, right? If I'm saying it right.
Yeah. Okay, how are you saying words like wicked and new in their hearts and good, and you're saying you're a materialist?
Because materialism is not nihilism. Materialism absolutely comprehends that the moral
order... Where does this good and this wicked come
materialism
from?
implies that the moral...
even as a Muslim, hold on. Even as a Muslim, there's divine command and that's it. There's no good and evil.
No, you're assuming Islam is a Talmudic faith. It's not a Talmudic faith. It's just a book of laws. No, that's a Talmudic interpretation.
No, this is the Ash'ari interpretation, actually.
It can be anything. You can call it whatever you want. It's not the living faith. It's a dead letter of the text, and that's it. That's not the Islamic way. If it sufficed to just follow the dead letter, you would just follow Talmud. That's it. Just follow the Talmud.
What are you talking about? No, I mean, this is a recognized interpretation within scholars.
And why should I care about the recognized interpretation? You're just deferring to other people's authority. Why should I care about their authority? Tell me why.
I'm saying, what I'm saying isn't necessarily
proof is in the pudding.
You can refer to the Quran and you can...
Proof is in the pudding.
You can refer to
you're channeling authorities, you're channeling conventions, you're channeling habits, but you're not explaining why they are true.
And you can refer to the Hadith, and you'll find that there is no...
The Quran is not a book of laws, primarily, okay? It's not some legalistic code. The Quran channels the truth in a very indirect way. in a very brilliant way, in a way that you can't just
Yeah.
look at it
Okay.
exoterically. It's the whole point is it needs to be interpreted with esotericism. That's why the Sufis were correct.
Listen, man, like I feel like you're just not really reconciling it. I mean, you're saying like Islam is Marxism, you or Marxism is Islam, whatever. You're not reconciling it.
I don't need to reconcile that which is self-evidently the same thing.
It's not though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've said a
Absolutely
bunch
it
of
is.
things. First of all, which can't be backed up. Second of all, which are just illogical.
What's illogical? The lack of symmetry or parity between Marxism and Saudi
I
Arabia.
mean, you're making.
Why should I
so
care
many
about
leaps
Saudi
here.
clerics funded by oil money? Why should I care about them?
When you keep saying Saudi,
Who am I to bow to? Who do you want me to bow to? This guy with a beard who says he's the halala. Why do I care? Why should I care about
What
that?
are you talking about?
Tell me, okay, pretend I'm a non-Muslim. Pretend I'm a non-Muslim. Convince me, why should I be a Muslim? And you know what these Muslims will
I'm
do?
not gonna do that.
You know what these Muslims will do? I'll tell you why the Islam is dead in the hearts of 99% of people who call themselves Muslims. If I'm a non-Muslim and I say, convince me why I should be a Muslim, you know what they'll say? They'll say, okay, because in the Quran, it predicted Isaac Newton and it predicted Einstein's discoveries. And if you read the amount of times that it says the word gravity, it actually predicted the quantum formulas. And it's like trying to create superstition. And it's trying to convince people that Islam is true because of a superstitious thing, that it somehow accounts for Steve Jobs' iPhone. They'll say, you should be a Muslim because actually the Quran has the blueprints of the iPhone before Steve Jobs. You see, they can never convince a non-Muslim to be a Muslim because it's true. They have to resort to modern science, which everyone believes is true because we all use computers and we all need modern medicine and we all depend upon modern scientific knowledge. So what they'll do is leverage modern scientific knowledge and say, oh, but the Quran is the thing that miraculously predicted all of this. They don't refer to the authority of the living faith. They don't refer to the authority of Allah. They refer to the authority of Dr. Fauci.
So you tell me, you convince me.
What?
You convince me to become a Muslim. If I'm not a Muslim.
ACP.US, ACP.US, know them by their fruits. ACP.US, know them by their fruits. The cause we're fighting for is a just cause. The cause we're fighting for is a virtuous cause.
Hold on, because this is really what
there's a struggle. Listen, the real living faith.
I mean, you're acting as
real
if you're
living faith.
No one has the authority.
The authority of faith comes from the struggle of the now, nothing else. The authority of the faith comes from the struggle in the here and the now. There's a struggle here and the now based on right and wrong, justice and injustice, truth and falsehood in the now. Whoever fights for this comprehensively, consistently, that's all that matters.
So you're saying if a specific people fight for, the liberation of other people, those are the people that we should follow? I mean,
if they do it with genuine faith in their heart.
How am I supposed to measure that? This is immeasurable.
You're supposed to measure it by their works. Measure it by their works. Know them by their works. Know them by their fruits. Why do all the enemies of the ACP have to lie about us like they lied about the Prophet, like they lied about the family of the Prophet? Why do they have to lie about us? Why can't they just why can't they just present us as we are, as the truth? Why do they have to fabricate X, Y, and Z about us? Because in our living existence as a movement and as a party,
I mean,
there is something about us that is authoritative and compelling to people. And the only way our enemies can deny us is by twisting what we are, turning us into something that we're not.
Okay, it was a pleasure talking to you. I'll probably get back sometime later, but I'm gonna go now.
ACP.US if you want to find true Islam. ACP.US. True Islam, not in the mosque. ACP.US is where the real Islam is. You know, the question of whether I'm joking or not is like, or I'm trolling or not, it's like at this point, what if truth takes a comedic form? Have you ever thought about that? What if truth just takes a comedic form? I am fundamentally trying to disrupt how people think of reality. I'm trying to fundamentally disrupt people's preconceptions about reality. And that much I'm very serious. I'm very serious. I'm dead serious. But sometimes the only way to do that is by also making you laugh. And maybe by making you laugh, I make you think. That's what I want to do. I want to make you think. I want to give you the courage to think about shit differently by laughing about shit, right? But either what I'm doing is the most satanic thing in the world or it's the holiest thing in the world. I don't know. But anyway, look, I'm either an atheist or the truest Muslim. I'm either the truest atheist in the world or the truest Muslim in the world. But my heart is in the struggle. My heart is for the revolutionary struggle. My heart is for communism. My heart is for this lineage, this struggle. I see the truth with clarity. I see the cope with clarity. The cope in others, okay? It's very clear to me. I don't care about labels. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care about the labels. I care about the resonance. I care about the rhyme. I don't care about the lyrics of a song. I care about the music. Not the lyrics. I care about the music. Like Enver Hoxha, for example. They say, oh, but the labels are different. Okay, what's the difference between saying Allah or why is that different from saying anti-revisionism, Marxism-Leninism, Stalin? It's like it's the same thing, but you're using a different word. It's the same sound. It's the same resonance, but the word is different. What's different? It's the same. Okay, I understand at some level the word matters. But it's like 95% of the meaning has nothing to do with the literal usage of the word. The word is a cherry on top. Understand the infrared understanding of language. Words are the cherry on top. There's all these different layers of ice cream that are there first. And then the word you use is just a cherry on top. But in the retarded Anglo-box outlook, the word is the whole sundae. That's not true. The word is not the whole sundae. The word is the cherry on top of the sundae. You understand? The Anglo-box says, no, the word is the whole sundae. No, it's fucking not. If I say, for example, let me explain something to you. If I tell you that this is a giraffe, have I committed a heinous sin if I tell you this is a giraffe? No. Because you can look at it and say, but Haas, what do you mean to communicate by calling this a giraffe? What do you mean to communicate? Like, what am I trying to say? Am I trying to say that this is the same thing as the four-legged, long-necked animal, the mammal that's called a giraffe? Well, maybe I'm not saying that. Maybe I'm saying something else. But the meaning of what this is not the word glasses. The meaning of there's so many layers to the meaningfulness of what this is. For example, it can be put on my face like this. I can fold it in this way. It is shaped in this way. For example, it has this color. It has this usage. That's all the layers of the sundae, right? And then the cherry on top is that we call it glasses. We call it sunglasses. That's the cherry on top. The idealist understanding of language says, no, the word is the entire sundae. No, the word is just what we're referring. This is the cherry on top of the sundae. The sundae is here, okay? You can see all the layers of the ice cream right here. The word sunglasses is a cherry on top. So if Enver Hoxha, if he looks like Islam or Muslim in the structure of what he's doing, and then the cherry on top is that he's confused about what kind of sundae he's making, That explains why he's an atheist confessionally, why he's saying, I'm an atheist, I eat pork, all this kind of superficial rituals. Oh, there's an unconscious religious structure that's a different Sunday. You know, there's different layers of ice cream, and then the word is a cherry on top. That's how it works. So, for example, it's like saying that the Saudi version of Islam is Islam. That's like saying if you take a shit and pile it up and put a cherry on top of the shit, that's the same thing as chocolate ice cream. No, it's not. Maybe there's a superficial resemblance somewhere there, but that's not the same fucking thing. I'm sorry. Saudi Arabia can lay claim and say that that's the authority on all Islam could ever mean because some guy with a beard said it is. Okay, this is the way I say so. Okay, so why should I care? Think about it. Where does the authority behind a religion actually come from? It comes from some person claiming something. Like you didn't have to follow Jesus. Nobody had to follow Jesus. Okay, they were all persuaded by his miracles. Okay, Judas still betrayed him. Nobody had to follow the prophet. He wasn't in charge. He wasn't like, oh, you have to. Nobody had to do it. Okay, so where does faith actually come from? The Muslims of today, they're channeling Dr. Fauci to justify their religion. Frankly, I wanted to be the good chairman who's just neutral on religion and treats Islam like all these other religions. I'm doing something very risky by dabbling and experimenting with matters of faith in this way. I understand. Trust me, I understand. But I look at the state of the world today and I say, something's got to give. Some things can't go on as they are. Something's got to give. There's a spiritual decay. There's a scourge of nihilism. There's an emptiness. How can we be just as revolutionary? How do we restore? This is the question. How do you restore the revolutionary Marxism? The only way to restore it, we have to relitigate the question of faith. Otherwise, where are we? I don't think in the 21st century, atheist Marxists cannot be revolutionaries in the 21st century. There's not a single example of them being revolutionaries. Anywhere. The last one was Che Guevara. So where are they? Isn't this an interesting question? When is the last time there have been atheist Marxist revolutionaries? Chairman Gonzalo? Was it Gonzalo? Where? Where? Think about it. Even if you're an atheist, that should bother you. You should think about that. Why is that? What happened to Marxism? What happened to revolutionary Marxism? Because atheists today, they seem like they're nihilists who are not willing to risk fundamental life and death struggle. They're not, no, well, I mean, have Pop-Tarts. And then some people say, well, in America, you have to, why? 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 Xi Jinping, he's not a revolutionary. He doesn't have to be either, because his country doesn't need a revolution. But Xi Jinping is not a revolutionary. I don't like non-Chinese people trying to channel China. Frankly, I'm going to wear a suit and be professional. Buddy, you're not. Before you do that, you need to go on the Long March. Do you not? I'm going to be China in America. No, you're not. No, because China, they have the inheritance of the Long March and the Cultural Revolution. What do we have? Nothing. We have the Black Panthers. It's the last thing we had. Black Panthers. Last thing we had was the Black Panthers. Okay? Truth is, that's the last thing we had, the Black Panthers. And what happened to them? They were destroyed. Why'd the Black Panthers fail? because they had no national question. They had the intercommunalistic understanding of the national question, which was true in some sense, but they had no. The Rainbow Coalition framework was the logic of the Sorites paradox. How many grains of sand make a heap? Okay. How many different groups in a coalition make for a unified central authority that can sweep the nation? Infinitely many, right? At some point, there's an infinitesimal gap you have to cross that says, we are the authority, right? The Black Panthers weren't interested in doing that. They just wanted to confine themselves to the black community. But then they got isolated. And because they were isolated, they were destroyed. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 can go on for infinity. To have a 1, you have to say 1. Yes, it's an infinitesimal gap. You have to cross 1. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 for it can go on forever. Forever. So where's 1? If Fred, this guy's trolling me. You have to have the confidence and the audacity of the 1. You have to. What makes you worthy? Fuck you. Nothing makes me worthy. Everyone is worthy already. So it's a matter of courage. Do you have the courage to name this worthiness?